Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you that how you can create a stocks application that is going to fake the data to display it on the screen. It will also have pull to refresh, and it will also use the actor functionality and feature in Swift. And also we will use async and await. So that's like all the cool features of the Swift language and SwiftUI baked into this particular project. So let's go ahead and get started. Now I am using Xcode 15 or iOS 15 and Xcode 13. So make sure that you are running those things. If you are not running iOS 15 and Xcode 13, then you will not be able to use most of the features that I'm about to show you. So what we want to do is we want to create a stocks application, and we are not going to tackle some sort of a real API. We're just going to make a stock service that is going to give us some sort of stocks information. It will be fake, but when we invoke it again in the future, in 1 or 2 seconds, it will give us some random pricing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create my stocks application, or the stock service perhaps. I'm going to go ahead and say stock service. Okay. This will be a class. We will go ahead and call it stock service. So in your actual application, your stock service will be responsible for communicating with the API, which is going to return you the correct stock pricing, the real stock pricing. But right now, we're just focused on pull to refresh, async and await, and actors in iOS 15 and Xcode 13. So we're going to be dealing with fake data. I'm going to go ahead and create a function called getStocks. And this is kind of like the old way of writing it. So you may have already have written this kind of code where you're passing in or a completion handler, which is going to give you an array of stocks. It's not going to return anything. Now for the stock, we're just going to go ahead and create a very simple structure. We will call it stock. Let name. So the stock will have some sort of a name and some sort of a price. Now inside over here in getStocks is where you will call an API. Now as I mentioned earlier on, we're not dealing with any API, but we're going to fake it. So let's say that we can do a dispatch.main.async after, just to give it some sort of a time delay of, let's say, 2 seconds or something. And it's going to go ahead and fire the completion handler. Inside this completion handler, we can create an array of stocks, some sort of a hard-coded value. There we go. You can see it's all hard-coded. And the thing that you need to understand over here are these pricing. You can see that the price we are getting for the stock is all random numbers. So for Apple, the stock will be between $100 and $200. So it will be randomly generated numbers. Finally, I can go ahead and fire completion, and I can send in the stocks. Pretty simple stuff. Stock service with getStocks. It's going to fire completion. There is no async and await. We're not using anything like that over here. Now let's go ahead and display it on our content view. So you can see the content view doesn't really have anything right now, but we want to display it. Now I shouldn't be calling the stock service right over here from my view. If I'm using an MVVM design pattern, I should be calling the stock service from within the stock list view model or some sort of a view model. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new file. This will serve as a view model, and I'm going to call it stock list view model. You can obviously name it anything you want. This will be stock list view model. Observable object, that's fine. It will have a function called getAllStocks. All right. Well, now we can go ahead and call the stocks. So I can go ahead and say web service. Well, our service is called stock service, so perhaps we should call stock service dot get all stocks. We will get the stocks, which is in stocks array. And we need to do something over here. Now, since we're using the MVVM design pattern, the stock list view model is going to be controlling the entire screen where you're displaying the stocks. But what about the individual stocks? So for individual stocks, I'm going to go ahead and create another view model, which will be a stock view model. And in order to create a stock view model, we need help from stock. So you will be passing in the stock model to create the stock view model. And also inside the stock list view model, we will go ahead and add a publish property, which will be an array of stocks. Now, this stocks that we are getting from our stock service is an array of stock models, not array of stock view model. If we want to display something on the screen, we will be using the stock view model array. So I'm going to go ahead and first of all, I'm going to go ahead and say dispatch queue.main.async. And the reason that I'm doing that is that we are making sure that we are on the main thread when we are trying to assign the publish property, which is stocks. Self.stocks equals to stocks.map and stock view model dot init. So basically what we're doing is that we took the stocks, which is an array of stock model objects. We went through using the map, and the map is going to pass in each item to the stock view model, constructing a new stock view model. And in the end, the map function has returned you an array of stock view model, which is assigned to stocks. Since the stocks property is marked with published, whenever you assign something to stocks, it is going to create an event, and that is the opportunity for our UI to update. So now let's go ahead and jump on to the UI and start using our stock list view model. There we go. Perfect. Instead of the text, we should be able to use the stock list view model dot stocks. Something unique about the stocks, I'm just going to say the name. Currently name is unique, so that should be okay. Stock in, and now we can go ahead and display the stocks. So I'm going to go ahead and display the stocks. There we go. Let's see if the formatted property works over here or not. You can see the formatted property is actually for iOS 15. But if I go to my project and if I go to my build setting, you will see that my project is iOS 14. So in order to use iOS 15, I need to change it to 15. There we go. So now it's no longer going to complain about async and await and actored and all of those cool new stuff. I can go ahead and build it hopefully now. Okay. Now at this point, if I run the page, it's not going to populate anything because we haven't called the stock list view model function, which is called the get all stocks. So on up here, we're going to call stock list view model dot get all stocks. And right now we are not using any of the features of async and await. We are not using any feature of task. We're not using any feature of actors, nothing, absolutely nothing, right? We're just trying to make it work. Maybe you already have this application. Let me go ahead and run this. And there we go. So we got the stocks. It doesn't really refresh right now because there is no pull to refresh. We need to implement it. And if I go ahead and run the application again, you will see some different values for the three stocks because it's all random. Okay, so it looks like this is working perfectly fine. But we want to use async and await. We want to use the new features of iOS 15. The first thing we need to do is we are going to go to our service, and we already have a function called getStocks, which works, but we want to make it async, meaning we should be able to call it without using the completion handler. So how can we do that? So I'm going to go over here and create another function. I will call it getStocks, the same name. It will be an async function, and it is going to return an array of stocks. All right. Now we have decorated this with async. This means that when you actually call this function, which is getStocks, you can await on it. And at that point, the thread will be suspended. It's not going to be killed or anything. It's going to be suspended. It's going to wait for that particular getStocks to finish, but it's not going to block any thread. Now, the problem with this is that we have getStocks, but this is the actual function that is doing all the work. So we want to call that function, because that is the one that's doing the actual work. So I can go ahead and call that function, getStocks, and I will get some sort of a result. But now the problem is, well, we got calling this function, which is getStocks, and whoever is waiting for this particular async function to resume never really got it to be resumed. So for that, we have to use a new feature, which is called continuation. And I'm going to go ahead and simply use something called unsafe continuation. So it's not really going to throw any error. And the continuation is going to give you access to, well, continuation. So this is kind of like the awaiting thing that is being awaited. And you need to make sure that this particular thing, the continuation, is getting resumed. So I'm just going to go ahead and call continuation.resume, returning the actual result, which is an array of stocks. So now we have created a function getStocks, which can be called asynchronously. So let's go ahead and use this function instead of our callback function. So now I'm going to go back to my getStocks, or getAllStocks, which is inside the stock list view model. I keep writing web service. It's actually stock service dot. And here you go. So now you can see one of the overloads is actually saying async. This means that, well, this is an asynchronous function, so you can await on it. Now, if I try to await over here, which will return me some sort of a stocks, it's not really going to work. You can only await inside a function that is marked with async. And getAllStocks is not marked with async. Now, I can go ahead and mark this with async. That's not a big deal. But there is another way that you can solve this problem by using async closures. So anything that is inside the async closure can be awaited. And this is immediate execution, meaning this particular async is not really going to wait for anything. It is simply allowing this closure to call or wait for getStocks. So now we get the stocks, and now we can perform the same action. Dispatch queue.main.async self.stocks equals to stocks.map, and then stock viewModel.init. So that portion, that part still remains the same. Now, one of the things that I don't like over here is that this part, dispatch queue, but we have to use this because the stocks property, which is declared right there, is actually marked with published. And it is always a good idea to set publish on the main thread. One of the features in iOS 15 is that you can use something called actors. An actor, and I'm going to go into detail maybe later on in a different video, But the main concept of actors is that they are thread safe. Now, we want everything that we do with the stock list view model, we want that to happen on the main thread. Everything. So the easiest way for us would be to simply go over here on the stock list view model and say main actor. This is basically saying that anytime you are going to set a property or call a function which is inside the stock list view model, that would be done on the main thread. Now, another thing that we should be thinking about are different kind of errors that can happen when you're trying to fetch a stock. So if we go back to our stock service, we should be able to say also that this might throw the error. I mean, it is possible that it might throw an error. Now, if you want it to throw an error, we will need to change this part because it will be with check continuation instead of with unsafe continuation. So that is something I will leave for you, or maybe I'll discuss that in the future. But with unsafe continuation, we are saying that it's not going to be failing. So for now, I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay. So we have now get stocks. That is perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and run our app to see what happens. All the other code on the client side still remains the same. Okay. Looks like it is working perfectly fine. Another thing that got introduced in iOS 15 is that instead of the onAppear, you can use something called a task. Now, task basically is fired when the view is actually loaded, and it gets canceled when the view is unloaded or disappeared. So this will be a very good place to call a request some data for your initial page load. And over here, I can go ahead and I can call stock list view model dot get all stocks. Another thing to keep in mind is that the task is already decorated with async. So if the get all stocks was a async function, we should just be able to await or call it with an await. But it's not. It's not an async function, because if you go and check the implementation of stock list view model get all stocks, you can see that it is not an async function. It doesn't really say anything about async. We use a different approach. We use an async closure. Let's go back again. Let's go ahead and build it. And let's go ahead and run it to see that if it will work exactly like before. Okay, looks perfectly fine. Now, one of the things that we want to implement is pull to refresh. Maybe the stock prices have changed, but how do I get my stock price? I don't want to kill the app and restart the app again. And in iOS 15, we can use something called refreshable. And inside refreshable, we can call a function that is going to give us the new stock prices, which in this case is get all stocks. Let's go ahead and run this. It simply appears as before, but now I can do a pull to refresh, and you will see the stock prices are changing to some other random prices. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and do a pull to refresh, and there we go. So in this particular video, you learn how you can create a stocks application with fake data. You learn a little bit about the actors and the main actor, MVVM design pattern, task, async and await, and also pull to refresh. So I really hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you like this video and want to support my channel, then the best way would be to check out my courses on Udemy. I have many different courses ranging from core data to SwiftUI, RX Swift, MVVM design pattern for UIKit, as well as MVVM design pattern and SwiftUI, new course on GraphQL, combined machine learning, Flutter, and so much more. Check out the links in the YouTube description. Thank you so much, and I hope that you enjoyed the video.